Is part two of the how to make sure that your resume passes and scores high enough on the ATS. I started this 2 weeks ago. I'm going to give you a little quick overview, but for sure, I would listen to that episode before this one. Not so much that it's sequential, but it kind of is a little bit, and I think it will be more easily understood if you do it in order. Uh, as a reminder, I also have the exclusive career podcast. And in episode 34, the last episode, I talked about what workplace well being really means. And I talked about what leadership can do to promote workplace well being at the corporate or division level, and as well as what you as an employee can do for your own workplace well being. And this was all based on an annual survey that is conducted by the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator Corporation. So it was research based, and I found it very interesting. But to be clear, I did not get in the weeds with data, but rather what it would help you and what information you would need to know. All right. So in the first episode on this topic of how to improve your resume for the applicant tracking system, I covered what the recruiter receives from the applicant tracking system. So first of all, they get a fit score, which is either a percentage match with the qualifications, or it'll say like highly qualified, high potential, moderate potential, something, whatever their system is. Then it gives a highlights bullet point, which might have like, okay, skills. Here's the skills that match with the job description. Here's the current and past job titles. And, have you been in the same field? Education, do you meet the degree requirements? And then tenure, where it's calculating your average time at jobs. And I gave you some good tips on all of that. I also talked about then it gets a gaps or missing requirement section, and it tells the recruiter what skills this candidate is missing based on what's on the paper. So you have to make sure it's on the paper. And then also it may infer soft skills and attributes, and it may even look at your cover letter. And then I also went on to talk about the fact that it may summarize the interviewer's input as well and kind of put all that together to help the hiring manager. So now I want to talk about sort of put all those pieces together and talk about the recruiter's view. So, what do they see? So, first of all, there's going to be a headline. So, it might be strong candidate with direct competitor experience. So, something like that. What's the big, you know, takeaway from this candidate relative to the job we're hiring for? Then there'll be that match score, which is either going to be like 9 out of 10, meets all educational and technical requirements, something like that. Top skills, and then it'll list those. So in this example, SQL, Tableau, Salesforce. Then next one would be red flags. Employment gap of 12 months in 2023, lacks specific industry certification. So red flags, just here's we have to decide, are these in fact deal breakers, right? And then finally, location, located in Austin, Texas, relocation not indicated. So I went down a bit of a rabbit hole on this in terms of how the ATS is going to evaluate the location piece for you. If an ATS is set up to find a local candidate, and this is often going to be for lower level positions, because clearly if you're at, director level and above, they want to bring in the best candidate, not necessarily the closest candidate. But if it is an in-office role and they don't want to pay relo expenses, they might automatically hide the ATS might automatically hide anyone living more than 50 miles away before a human ever sees the resume. So everything else could be great, but you could be disqualified on location. Now, again, I went down a rabbit hole. Willing to relocate. That phrase on your resume does not help the ATS. It is looking for city, state, and zip. Now, I haven't included city, state, and zip in a really long time on my clients, but I'm going to start a little bit. And here's the deal. If it helps you, so this is an in-office job and it's in Cincinnati and you live in Cincinnati, it might not help you, but it certainly isn't going to hurt you that you live in Cincinnati. Now, I never put, notice I said city, state, and zip. I never put a mailing address, but city, state, and zip. So Cincinnati, Ohio zip code. If it helps you, include it. If not, leave it out. Here's a good example. I have a client right now who lives in Charleston, South Carolina, but she's relocating back to her home city of Chicago this summer. Her husband is finishing up a residency, a medical residency, and they're going to move back up there. And so what makes the most sense on the resume would be in her contact information. So this is up at the top where she's got her name and phone number, email address, all of that. She could put Chicago, Illinois in parentheses, relocating June 2026, right? So that's going to allow the ATS to pick up the keyword Chicago, Illinois, while the parentheses provide the necessary human context for the recruiter. Two other options. You can eliminate city zip altogether, if that, again, is not going to serve you or help you. Or if you have a family member or a close friend in the area, then you could do that. I have a client right now who is relocated out of the country, but has a residence in Florida. She maintains a residence there. And so she's using that address just to put her in the United States rather than, out of the country. And then I did a deeper dive because I was like, does this really apply to senior level, executive level positions? Seems like it should work differently. And the answer is not really. So the employer might be open to paying relocation expenses, but has the ATS filtered you out for location before the hiring manager ever sees it? So again, your name, maybe you currently live in New York, New York. You could put that there. Relocating to Charlotte, North Carolina. If you have a specific date, put that in there. Right. So I hope that hasn't confused you. It's given you a little bit of food for thought. Next, I want to talk about the 3 ways to help optimize your candidacy based on all of this information. The machine is writing your first impression. And if you don't write it right, the human is never going to see you. Everything I do is with an eye to both the machine that sees it first and the humans that are going to hopefully see it next. So, number one, you want to mirror the job description in the sense of if they ask for client relations experience, 5 to 7 years, and you have customer service experience, AI might say that client relations is a missing skill. Again, you don't know the system they have, you don't know how advanced it is, all of that. Change your phrasing to match theirs. And I talked about this in the last episode, but this can also include massaging job titles. If you are chief people officer or you were junior people officer, I've never heard that job title, I'm making it up, and they are looking for someone in human resources, they've, kind of old school with the job title, use that title as your job title because that's what you actually were. Change your phrasing to match theirs. It cannot know how well it is going to, make those leaps to similar job titles or similar skill sets and that kind of thing. So that's number one. Number two, contextualize your dates. So to avoid job hopping flags, we talked about that in the last one. What's a red flag? What's a yellow flag? What's a green flag? If you've had multiple contract roles, say for example, and you maybe whether you've given your business a name or you've just done it on your own shingle, group them under a single heading such as contract consultant 20 to 22. I've gotten a fair amount of resumes over the years where someone has done contract like IT work, for example. And it is so unclear to me when I see that resume if they were job hopping, who did they work for? Because they didn't have that cohesive message saying, under my own, part of my own business, don't use personal pronouns, but you know what I mean. Here are representative contracts that I worked, consulting engagements, whatever it is. So you want to make sure I go back to this statement so many times with clients, confused people don't buy. And that applies to whether confused people are trying to buy a home, a pair of shoes, or you as a candidate. If you confuse them on your resume with things like dates or where did he actually work, they will just pass you over and move on to the next candidate. And then number three, state the obvious. If the job description says, graduation from a top tier university, that's a weird one, I think. I don't know that I've ever seen that. But if don't assume that AI knows that the university you went to is actually top tier. So go in like this example is UC Berkeley. I think we all know that's a top tier school. But if it's asking for something about your university or the company you worked for, maybe they want experience in Fortune 100 companies. How can you include that parenthetically or some other way into your resume? Don't expect it to make mental leaps. It won't. Now, I want to give one final note on job stacking. So, the rule of thumb for many years, because of applicant tracking systems, is repeat your name, the name of the company, and the city, state, and all of that for each job you held at that company, because the ATS will not see those as, promotions within the same company. They'll see them as separate jobs, and you might get flagged for job hopping. Now, newer systems can do that. But the thing is, you don't know when you apply, is it a brand new system? Is it an old system? So it's still safer to do at lower levels. I'm going to kind of talk about executives a little bit differently. So while the newer systems can handle what's called a nested format, I'm going to recommend that for senior leaders. Put a pin in that. But if you are at a lower level, or maybe for whatever reason you think they have an old system, it's still safer to put the company name for each position that you've held. And that's not going to be an issue if you were in each of those positions for a good period of time, 2 years or more. What can be a problem is, you got promoted quickly. Well, that's a great thing. And there is a way to do that all under one company name. So instead of going, okay, I'm vice president now, down here without a new company name because it's the same company, I was associate vice president. Down here, I was a senior director. I can put all those job titles, especially if they were all of the same vein of work and just more responsibility, more level of responsibility. I'm going to group them all together with the inclusive dates, and we're good to go. So at the executive level, this can be the nested format can really show, loyalty, promotability. It can give a better narrative. So at the executive level, probably going to be okay. Now, the exceptions are if you're a boomerang employee, which is you left and you came back. There's no way to do that. I've seen clients try, and it is a hot mess, and the system cannot make sense of that if you've got two disjointed dates together with, like I was here from this date to this date, went somewhere else for a couple of years, came back to it. The ATS, you're going to just confuse it. And if you move to a different job, different department, kind of a completely different function within the same company, you probably aren't going to try to nest those jobs in any way because they're completely different jobs. All right, so a lot of content about ATS, right? And it's constantly evolving. So I freely admit to the fact that this is one that will not stand through the test of time, years from now, because the systems will evolve, and who knows what job searching and applicant tracking systems and AI will look like in the job search process in just a few years. But for right now, this is pretty accurate. I did a lot of research on this one, so I hope it's been helpful. And I'll see you here in 2 weeks. Remember to check out the exclusive career podcast for all things career management, leadership development, executive competencies, and all of that. Take care.